Hello everyone and welcome back to the Talking Stick Show. So I'd like to welcome back this week again, coming on for the second time, Bruce MacDonald. Hello Bruce.
Hi Dale, thank you for having me back. Hi Laura, hi Maddie.
And thank you for coming back on. And we have the special co-host Laura and Matthew. Hello Laura.
Hi Dale. Hi guys.
Hello Matthew.
Hi everyone.
Brother. And so Laura, do you want to share the story you told me about the stone at the start and your experiences of what happened in the last week? If it's something you'd want to share with the when you went to the was it the cranial sacral stuff? You know, yes.
Remind me.
Yes, so you messaged me talking about you did is it the somatic release stuff? Yeah, and I kept thinking it would be great for you to speak about that on the show. So do you want to speak about what you've been doing in the last few weeks on that?
Yeah, happily. Sorry, yeah, absolutely. So I've just done the 4th module of up-ledger cranial sacral therapy, which is called SER. It's a somato release, so it's a body emotional release. So we were lucky enough to have a guy over from USA who has worked with Dr. John Upledger, the pioneer really of cranial sacral therapy. He's worked with him since the beginning. So this guy brings an absolute wealth of knowledge, and we were a fairly small group. And I was very, very lucky because it's not often you get to work with somebody with that amount of ability and experience, or receive a treatment from them. So because everybody in the group wants a treatment with him, he said, you need to pick a number between 1 and 12. I'll write it down and then you go round and tell me what number you've picked. Well, I picked 7, which was what he had written down. Oh, yes, I've got it, which was great. We'd already talked a little bit about two feathers medicine and shamanic practices, which he was very interested in and very receptive to all that. So it was great. So yeah, so I went on the table with a training assistant who I chose, who I've done a lot of work with before. And quite often it is a lot of trauma release. But I have done, obviously on my self-mastery journey, working mostly with Andrew, I've done a lot of this work. So mine was, I was beaming just from ear to ear. I was so happy because I went immediately to a situation where I was coming to Earth. And I was a 40 million year old rock. So this,
I love it. I was like, I've got to ask her about it. It's like, really cool.
40 million year old rock. And he was saying about, you know, how many incarnations, or they're very good at asking, well, this is what we're taught. You're good at asking the questions to actually enable you to release something that you need to release. And all I was releasing really was a great deal of joy. And I was shaking. I did a little bit of releasing. People release trauma in different ways. I tend to shudder. Whether that was trauma or excitement, I'm not really sure. And it was like going on a journey. I just went through space, and he was asking questions. And I said, well, I've had millions and millions of lives, and it's my turn to come to Earth. And it was just like he and the TA, the training assistant, were my guides and guardians, putting me through the golden tube to come through the sun portal to Earth. So I think this completely astounded him and possibly the class. But I was very lucky to have that experience with him. And he actually, because he part of SER is you study, it's really psychospirituality, psychology. He went away and looked up one of Carl Jung's phrases, and I think it's something about, I don't know exactly, so don't quote me on it, but it's something about we've all been rocks and plants before we came to Earth. So that, because he likes Jung, that actually qualified it for him as well. So that was, yeah, that really was a tremendous experience, and I was very privileged to have that and to be there. And here I am.
Here you
on
are.
Earth.
And how's things with the Two Feathers Medicine then, Maty and Laura? How's the creation going on there?
Maty?
We're getting there. We're getting there. We just have to learn a whole new language. So it's been a learning curve. It's been great.
Yeah.
It's actually almost like our self-mastery process has moved away from the rituals and ceremonies to technological learning. So it's all a part and parcel of it. It really is. It's been a great journey, but we're excited. We're getting close to release now. So we're ready to release some videos and start producing content. And the website will be up and running within a couple of weeks, hopefully.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah,
Beautiful,
exciting time. But it's a journey, as Matt said, and we started with the ebook, and that became a journey. And that was something, you know, encouraged by Bruce as well, because at the turn of last year, we were looking at doing something with Bruce. And then we all sort of went our separate ways. And then Maty and I came together and thought, no, actually, Bruce's idea of us doing a book is a good one. Changed the idea that Bruce had. But we actually figured, no, this is something we can go forward and do, because I so enjoyed contributing to galactic history.
So let me ask you guys, what do you think of writing as a spiritual process in practice?
Well, for me, it was very much like the same as when I created videos recently. I didn't release some. I did a big cleanse over the summer solstice, and I recorded the whole thing, 7 days of ceremony, and it all went awry near the end. I got sick, and it was interesting to watch. But as I'm editing the videos and I'm watching myself back, I could see body language that I know that I'm doing as I'm moving, but I don't know what it looks like. And it was really interesting to see the way I look and the way I appear and the way my voice is. And I found the same with writing. I found that my inner dialogue came out more, if that makes sense. And
Yes.
my inner dialogue is way more, I don't know the right word, instinctive. There's less barriers, so it just flows. There's nothing in between. There's no other person's receiving. It's just me giving out that which is flowing from me, if that makes sense. It was pure.
Yep. Dale,
Yeah.
Laura?
Yeah, starting the book for me was the start of yet another spiritual journey, as you're saying, because it then went into a lot of research and trying to use my own linguistics, not just repeating Andrew's, although I've since learned from him that he's really happy if we do use his linguistics, because of course they carry the frequency of the word he's putting out. Mine led to a dream where I met Two Feathers, as in my guide, as in a voice. But we had a long conversation in a dream I could finally remember. And he was overjoyed about the book. And so when it came to what should we call the book, it was Two Feathers Medicine. And then he gave me What the World Needs to Heal. So that's what I'm using as the sort of the strap line. And then I find when I go, I've got a camper van, as you know, so I've started to go away on my own. And it seems to be when I do my best writing. And it won't necessarily, there's nothing sequential I've done in the book at all. I have an idea, I wrote something recently about the myth of Glastonbury as a spiritual place, and it's quite punchy. And I wrote it because I'd been there and had a negative experience, which is something we might do on one of our shows, actually, Dale, isn't it? Or maybe, anyway. Yeah. So, and then, oh my goodness, and then I started it took me on a journey of research. And the one person I found that Andrew recommended that actually I feel is delivering some sort of truth, because he's been researching for 40 years, is Michael Tazarian. And I was absolutely bowled over listening to him.
Yes.
So, because I'm doing a camper van trip for 3 weeks to Scotland and the Outer Hebrides, I particularly want to read up on his Atlantis, because he's talking about the accuracy of the standing stones in that part of the world. And there's so much more there. So I'm off on, look, already I'm off on another tangent.
Oh no, it's not at all, it's great.
That's what writing does. That's what writing does. It takes you on a journey itself.
Yeah.
And a question for you, Bruce. So from listening and hearing about people's experience of writing books, so say your creativity, is it kind of come through, I'd say at will, or is it kind of times where you'll be like, right, I've got a bit of a writer's block? What's that like for you? Is writer's block a big thing for you, Bruce?
No, never had it. I've never been really, I mean, I have felt like a little uninspired at times. Like I'm not always working on a book. When I sit down to work on a book, I never get blocked. And there's a bunch of little secrets I can pass on. So if you don't feel, when you start writing, what happens is you just keep moving forward with however the story comes out. But if some days you'll wake up and you don't want to move forward, go back to the beginning and start your editing process. So you do editing and writing simultaneously. And when you're editing, you're just sort of like preparing the ground for the next wave of energy in your story to come, and so on and so forth, and trying to understand your story a lot better. Writing remains one of the great mysteries for me. I mean, to this day, I don't really have any sense of where it comes from. You get a lot of help when you're writing. All writers say the same thing, whether they're on a path or not. We don't know where it comes from. I just saw the exact same thing from a little meme on the internet, a quote from Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And he said, basically, look, people ask me all the time where these books came from. I'm going to join the chorus of all my ancestor writers. I don't know. But it's a beautiful process, because if you knew, it wouldn't be as much fun. I think that's the whole point of creativity, is it happens in the moment, right? And you don't really know where it's coming from.
Michael Jackson used to say that if a song came in, he'd have to get it down quickly before Prince got it.
Yeah, I remember that. That was brilliant. And talking of books and writing, let's say our last show we were going to talk about Stardust Ranch, but we didn't actually get around to doing it. That was so let's talk about the great John Edmonds and Stardust Ranch then. And I think to start with some content would be to talk about the difference between a grey and the difference between, say, a Syrian or a Palladian or anything like that, because a lot of people don't know the difference between greys or the difference between a being who has a tree of life. So does anybody want to start with that before we go into the story more?
I'll have one thing to say about that. And the truth is that you can never completely really know what you're dealing with, because one could appear as the other and the other could appear as the other.
Yes.
And, and just because someone's a Palladian doesn't mean they're not an asshole. It just as much as you take every person on the planet Earth, you can't put us all into the same box and say it's a good person, a bad person, or this person, or that person. And, with those guys, you just amplify that, so you never know really what you're dealing with. The interesting thing that I felt, with just hearing the small bits that I have, is that for some reason on that property, they weren't coming in cloaked, were they? They were coming in as they are, and coming in close and personal as well, because usually they use mind, like really excessive mind control, and even the good ones will do that when they come up to a being. They will control their mind to a certain element, but this guy had none of that, did he, Bruce?
No. So well, I'll tell you what John told me, and then I'll tell you, some of my experiences, because when I worked with John, there was a lot of some kind of a psychic link was created between the two of us, and a lot of stuff that was happening at the ranch started in a smaller degree happening where I live here, in the Talamanca Mountains in southern Costa Rica. And I mean, when I say stuff started happening here, I mean, my wife was aware of it. Like, it was really quite an experience. So the Greys that are at John's ranch, I don't think they were really a race per se. I think what they were, or part of what they were, was the suit you can get into on the fourth dimension to come into Earth and have an experience. And there are vendors selling this on the other side, just like we would get in line to go on a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. And so that was part of it. There's a lot of stuff that didn't make it into the book, and there's some stuff even now after John's passing, and we finished the book released the book December 31st, 2019. There's even to this day, there's stuff I don't feel entirely comfortable talking about. Maybe today you guys will crack my walnut and it'll come out, but it's just so weird. Maybe I should just say it, and you guys make of it what you will, okay?
Yeah.
Because this is
crack him open.
okay. So this is a big.
Yeah,
This
we'll
is
be the fourth wall.
Thank you. So this is. I believe I have John's permission to say these things, and when you pick up Stardust Ranch and you read it, we wrote it in a way that, okay, this is a UFO experience, and this is the experience of one man and his wife on this ranch, okay? But really, there's a lot more to John that we decided to keep out of the book because we didn't want to confuse people too much. John is a first-generation super soldier and one of the best they ever produced. Okay, one of the best they ever produced in that first generation. And he became a kind of a mentor to a lot of the next generation of super soldiers. Super soldiers usually don't live as long as John Edmonds lived. Most of them, they die in their 40s or 50s, or, they don't make it as long as John did. So number one, John was a super soldier, which raises the question, was he placed on Stardust Ranch as a guardian, a sentinel for the Defense Force of the United States, or did he actually randomly just find that ranch? Well, he never really answered that question for me, or I didn't have the balls to ask him. John was a bit scary.
Yeah,
I punked it.
I was going to say something like that. I was like, when I was reading, I was like, wow, I'd love to have met John. Like, Jesus.
E.T. meets the Hells Angels is how I describe it, And
I love when he said Theo, he just doesn't have any fear or gets worried about anything. He just doesn't seem to have that in him.
he didn't, John did not know what fear was, okay? So it was like a kind of emotional leprosy for John. He just didn't feel fear, and which was it's an incredible quality in a human being. He felt tremendous sadness. I think what hurt him the most was, what happened to his wife on the ranch. She had a lot. There's a radiation sickness that people get when they're exposed to some of these extraterrestrials. So for the people who say this is all in people's head, or there's a rising Christian voice fighting back now saying this is all demonology. We need to engage these people peacefully and respectfully and come to a common understanding, because this is knowledge the human race has to get right. This is foundational tribal knowledge, like the basic multidimensional experience. And most of the ET stuff is just fourth dimensional. So it's really elementary, and people have to get this right. But by the way, that was kind of the philosophy we wrote a Stardust Ranch with, which is why it's such a different kind of ET book. It doesn't read like any of the other books. And then everybody, as soon as that book came out, everybody changed their tune. Stephen Greer started doing Close Encounters 5, direct consciousness contact with extraterrestrials. Well, John and I explained in that book how 99% of people who have an ET experience, it will be a consciousness experience, not a physical experience.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was talking about this in this context before we put the book out. And then everything changed, and nobody gave John credit for that, which is fine. He wasn't a guy out there looking for credit or any. I'm sorry, Dale, what was the original question?
So I think the first question they asked was just a difference between, like, say the grey, where you get loads of different spirits can go into that one machine and kind of drive it forward into this reality.
So another one of the great untold stories of Stardust Ranch, we get into it a little bit at the end, but not in any great detail, is John's incredible experience with what we would call neutral or benign ETs. I mean, we're talking about a guy who literally at his kitchen table in the physical had tea and conversations with 7 or 8 different races of extra. They used to come and visit him. He told me that he told me that the ranch put out a signal that was incredibly curious to anything passing within, I don't know, a few light years or anything. And they would detour, almost like a Star Trek episode. They would detour. Hey, what is that? We've never seen that kind of signature before. What is that? And what it really was, I mean, none of us really knew completely, including John, what the ranch was. And then after I finished Galactic Historian, about, I think 2 months after we finished the book, I got a call from Andrew one day, and he said, do you think you could arrange a meeting between myself and John Edmonds? And I said, Andrew, I don't think that's a good idea. And, and then he persisted 2 or 3 times, and I finally arranged it. And John didn't like to be hijacked. He didn't like to be forced to meet people. He's a very, very private person. He and Andrew ended up becoming the best of friends. And Andrew was a very, very positive experience for John, a very healing experience. But ultimately, what was going on at this ranch, which set it apart from the other ones, this was not just a dimensional portal, it was a time portal. And it had been used extensively in the timeline wars. And there's even a timeline bunker under there. Okay. And so John had sort of been placed as the keeper there. Now, John was an exceptional human being, even aside from being the first generation super soldier, being the guy who lived on Stardust Ranch for 25 years, even at a genetic level. Before the government got a hold of him, he was an exceptional human being. Andrew described it to me this way. He said, Bruce, most human beings have 1 to 3% founder DNA. John has about 25% founder DNA, right? He had this incredibly rigid body. It was almost like Wolverine from the X-Men. Melissa gets into this when when he finally was taken out, how hard it was for them. He had 7 ruptures in the Widowmaker valve, and he was some headhunter calling me for a tech writing contract. So he was an exceptional human being in that regard too. John was fully psychic, like as psychic as Andrew. And John could walk right. So the 2 times I started the book in 2012, quit because I was a punk. I was a punk and a bitch, and I quit because I got scared. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm not afraid to admit that. Okay, I'm not afraid to. I'm not afraid to admit that at all. And it was really creepy. I was living in an apartment in Toronto, and it was like the walls were closing in on me the first time I worked on that book. But John always felt I was the guy to write the book. By the way, he tried to write this book with 3 or 4 writers. Everybody quit halfway through. One woman finished a manuscript, but she ended up being somebody's dog. She was on a leash. I won't get into that. It's a whole international story. And he prohibited that book from being published. And there were a lot of foreign intelligence agencies interested in Stardust Ranch too, including the Chinese. The Chinese intelligence wants Stardust Ranch. So, sorry guys, I get all excited. I forget the questions. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore.
Got from all So Maty and Laura, so what's your take and perspective of John and reading Stardust Ranch? We'll start with Maty.
Well, I've had this kind of contact. I've had, I've had them come up to me in the street. Never had them in my kitchen. Well, not like just without some sort of mind control going on. But I had them come up to the street. But I've had some strange stuff as well. Some bits where like the wife would be pregnant for a little bit, and then the pregnancy all of a sudden disappears. I wake up with strange marks on my body, or blue balled like crazy, feeling like I've been going at it all night. I remember once waking up, just coming through my ceiling and landing down on my bed, and I've all kinds of crazy shit. And one thing that people don't really expect is that when you enter into one of these moments, when you suddenly realize what's going on, the adrenaline will kick in. The adrenaline will kick in. And as much as you could be one of these people who's asking for contact, that's what I was doing. And when they actually landed and then came to pick us up, my heart almost exploded out of my body, almost collapsed on the floor, honestly. And then all of a sudden it was like that. And But this guy, this guy was waking up with a rather horrific looking being in his room, and then he just killed him, you know.
Yeah.
And like the bravery that would have took to do that, most people would have froze. And an ounce of fear, and these beings can totally manipulate you. He must have been this wall of just nope, you know. So I'll tell you what we're interested in, Bruce. Any stories you've got that haven't made it into the book, maybe some things that are unique. They don't have to be grotesque or you know, risky, but just unique.
Okay, I'm going to tell you something now that like this has never come up anywhere in the ET material or anything, and this is the perfect group to tell it to. And I want to get what you guys think of this. Okay. So John would go through phases where he would become the predator, not the prey. Okay, and he had ways of drawing out the grays, and one of the ways that he would draw them out and bring them into the world and make them accessible to him if he wanted to kill them or whatever is, I'm really uncomfortable saying this out loud, he would do blood smears around a house of menstrual blood.
Right, cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
So and I remember when he told me that, I said, man, that's not going in the book.
Can't teach people this kind of magic. You can't teach people this kind of magic. It's irresponsible. But if you know it and there's a reason behind it, and you know, then whatever, you know.
Well, and yet, Bruce, and yet you have no problem writing about blood of the month in God's an Economist.
Well, yeah, we can. Thank you for
covered that one quite well.
Thank you for continuing to listen to that book, Laura. I'd love to get your opinion. Monty Dean is finishing up the edit. I've done the edit on the paperback, so I'm going to re-release that book under its new title. And this is a pre-edited version that I went back to because I think my editing house and my publishing house in Canada made changes. Yeah, that's a really, really, really interesting chapter in that book. Wait till you get to Devil Woman.
Okay, I have.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Saying nothing.
Right.
That is even more interesting. But yes, it brings all this to mind. With what you said.
I know the title for this video now. Menstrual attracts greys.
Just as a keyword.
No, I'm not gonna. I was taking
don't do that. Please don't do that.
So Laura, what was your view on reading it and your experience with John Edmonds?
Blown away. I don't think there can be anything out there like this that gives such a first-hand, well-written account of so much stuff that is absolutely must be irrefutable. What has happened, and the bravery both he and Joyce have shown, and what I really love about John Edmonds, and I'm going to talk about him in the present tense because he is such a great being. He is doing some great work on another dimension. So I'm absolutely sure, and maybe Bruce can, feel more on that.
Yeah.
But he fought quite rightly to protect his wife and to protect what was his. And he dealt with it in some ways no different than if there were a bunch of, people, assassins coming to take over his home. He seemed to despite how this would floor most people, he very quickly seemed to sort himself out into what he needed to do and how he worked out what he needed to do to deal with them, let's say. I don't want to give too much away for people who haven't read the book. I actually had it on audio, and that's fantastic because Monty is such a good narrator. So I don't want to say too much, but just the bravery, the tenacity he showed to stand his ground. And that's his piece of space-time reality. He's fighting for what is his. He's fighting for his bit of earth. And I totally understand why he did what he did. And I was wondering, Bruce, how much programs like The X-Files and Men in Black aided people in believing John's story, or whether that worked against what you were trying to do, because it can work both ways, can't it?
That is an excellent question, Laura. No, I wasn't a huge fan of the X-Files. I've never been like a sci-fi guy, and I've never been an ET guy, despite being the author of Stardust Ranch. I've had my own ET experiences beginning at 10 years old. All my ET experiences are witnessed. They're all fully awake, walking around, and somebody is with me of a non-susceptible mindset. It's almost like when I have an ET experience, the second one happened when I was about 37. I had come back from a 12-week retreat in a cabin that had no electricity. I ate one meal a day. I fasted for 12 weeks, and I was working on a novel and praying and meditating. And I got all charged up, and I came home, and I was leaving the house with one of my roommates at the time. And he was 10 years older than me, and he was the crustiest stand-up comedian he'd been a stand-up comedian for 25 years. It's all and he just like real cement head. Okay. And we see the light and everything. He goes, well, that was an ET. I said, what else could it be? And then we talked about it for 2 months. The other one, the other really noticeable one, which a little sort of Palladian disc, that was with my brother. That was outside of Ottawa, coming back from the family cottage. And we were both sitting knees up with our arms like this on the back shelf of a Volkswagen Bug, looking out the back window. And we saw the little Palladian disc floating off in the side in the woods. And my brother and I, we looked at each other like this. Really weird experience. I get home for a family Christmas when I was about, I think this is when I was going to university. So I was about 25 years old. I started a bit late on my program in university. I never finished high school. And I was living in Toronto. I went home for Christmas. And when I got off the bus and I grabbed a cab, I came home, I came through the front door, and they were already at the Christmas dinner table, or 2 days before Christmas, but my family was eating at the dining room, and they were giving my brother a super hard time. And my brother is like total, like non-imagine. He's a chartered financial analyst. He golfs. There's none of this kind of imagination in him. And he had told my parents and my sister the UFO story, and they were mocking him. And I walk in the door, I go, yeah, that 100% that happened. And yeah, so I had to validate my brother there. But I'm sorry, Dale, what was the question again?
Was it my question about X-Files in Black? Does soft disclosure films, are they soft disclosure, or is that unfortunately
Chris Carter? Yeah. So I always wonder where Chris Carter came from. For those listening who don't know, he's the founder and principal writer of the X-Files. He did one subsequent season called Millennium, and it didn't pan out as well. But I think, yeah, he did work with people. I think he was given files, he was given access. I think this happens quite a bit. I think they opened up some material for Steven Spielberg for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In their own way, they kind of want to get the information out, right? So whether Chris Carter affected things or not, I don't know. I would say probably the bigger influence was probably the writer Whitley Strieber, who ended up, making that movie that Chris Walken ended up in. I think he was a much bigger influence on experiencers and stuff like that. So I remember, talking to John Edmonds about the X-Files, and he was quite critical. It's kind of like before we started the show, Maddie was telling a story about his dad, about being book read but experientially lacking. Well, that's when you went into a critique of these shows in a Skype call with John Edmonds, it was like the ultimate experiencer, right? So he would, they got this right, they got this wrong, they got this right. Now, John also had this effect in the general ET community. They were terrified of him, and they didn't like him that much. He wasn't welcome at MUFON and all these big conferences where people make their annual income, right? All of these so-called pundits and experts speaking on the ET movement. Very few of them have that much experience, and there's some that just focus on physical data. I can't remember the fellow's name, but he's got a PhD. He was an academic before he became a publisher in the UFO, Rich Dolan. So he writes a lot about, military aircraft and how they were influenced by acquisitions from, let's say, this ET world and stuff like that. But at the level of pure experience, except for a few people, I think John was probably the most experienced person on the planet with ETs, beyond Alex Collier, beyond any of them. I mean, Alex Collier was basically just an Andromedan contactee. John, I mean, some of the stories to this day, I still find difficult to believe some of the stuff that John told me, right? So obviously the most magnificent, if you've read the story, the most incredible thing, and the one that was witnessed by everybody, was when Brandy showed up to try and clean the house with the two Syrians. And what went down, the purple lightning and everything, and and you remember the police. So the police services in Arizona, Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, they all know this stuff is real, and they have a policy when people call about this stuff and they insist that an officer be sent. They basically have this policy where the officer shows up and gaslights you. Imagine trying to do that to John Edmonds.
Yeah.
So hey, and he would notice as soon as the cops would show up, he'd say, hey, your badge isn't on your hat and it isn't on your chest. Why have you taken off all your identifying material? Sir, we just have your report will be written up, but I just don't want to be identified with this. I want to keep my job. So why we started talking about this stuff in the way we did in the 80s with Chris Carter and a few other things, I don't know. I think you guys might even be better qualified to answer that question than me. But it really did start in the 80s and 90s, right? Where this really became a huge public topic. What are your guys' thoughts? What was it about the timeline and the human timeline that this information needed to start coming into human consciousness?
I don't know about that. I think a lot of it was negative. No, most of the narrative is negative, isn't it? And for some reason, there are films I could name here and there, but most of it's just baloney. And they never really addressed, and this goes for the X-Files as well. They never really addressed the multidimensional aspect of it, because they don't just turn up and you talk and then off they go. And then there's always a dialogue going. There's dreams. There's all this other stuff that goes on. The way they communicate in the unseen worlds, the way they exist, fully multidimensionally, and they address you on that level. And they don't seem to include any of this in these kind of films. I thought K-Pax was great.
Yeah.
I thought that addressed that aspect of it. And it would look ridiculous to someone who hadn't experienced, you see, because you could quite easily laugh at that movie, but if you've experienced, you'd get it completely. There are a few others as well, but yeah, most of it's just lacking the real depth of what it actually means, multidimensionality. They're getting close now, though.
There was a period in the 90s, I remember, one of the first UFO films I watched scared the shit out of me about extraterrestrials. It was like, the Blair Witch Project, but an alien film. It's like was done on camera, and there was this alien, and I think this like green laser got shown, and from then I was terrified. So when I got to about when the internet first came out, I had my little tiny computer, and I was just researching about them and looking into them. And what I kind of got was the 90s period with those shitloads of people being abducted. And there was so many different stories out there throughout the 90s of people being taken, people losing time. And I'm not really sure. I've not really seen much now of that and recent experience. And I think John's experience is one of the most recent, which I've heard. What about yourself, Laura and Maty?
Arrival.
I watched Aliens, and that I wouldn't watch one after Aliens, but I was a lot younger then.
Signs, that was a good one. I love that.
But I particularly asked about Men in Black, bearing in mind what he witnessed with the guys who came to two guys who visited him, not saying any more, not wanting to give more away. But I wondered whether the film came out afterwards, because it might, it was a funny film, so it might have worked against what he was trying to he was letting people know had actually happened. So yeah, I just wondered, because there's obviously some correlation there.
I think John mentioned in the book that the Men in Black, that experience he had was before the Men in Black. Then
Right.
yeah, I think he mentioned that in the book. Yeah. Oh, it was. Sorry, no, it might have been a radio show. The first time I heard John was Bruce and John on a radio show, and I think he mentioned it there that it was actually before his experience of the Men in Black was before when the film was created. Is that right, Bruce?
Well, when was the first one with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith? When was the first Men in Black? So John, yeah, it might have been around the same time, but I mean, John had extensive experience with the Men in Black. It wasn't just the ones we documented in the book. They were, I suspect that earlier in John's life, in his early 20s or mid 20s, he was probably approached by the physical representation for this group or this league to become a Men in Black. There are humans participating in this as well. I'm not quite sure what all their function was. I think John withheld certain things, quite frankly, to protect me. He could read me completely, and I think he withheld some stuff. I maybe just there are certain things it's dangerous to know. I mean, if you discover them on your own, that's okay. But if it's passed through communication, it might break some oath or promise he had made in his developmental years going through these programs that made him a super soldier. And they police these programs and the underlying contracts quite vigorously.
Quite vigorously. As well, Bruce, huh?
I'm sorry, one more time.
So it might require some karma as well, if you're giving people this information and they go out and misuse it. It's not just whoops, it's it's on you in different ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
He didn't talk about in the book, he didn't talk about his actual experience of being abducted. He didn't want to share that, did he? And
no.
Yes. And I've heard a lot of other stories about abductions, and some of them are really, really dark. And so I totally understand why he didn't want to share some of the stories.
Yeah.
Did he have any really positive ones? Did he have any good friendships? Because I've met some ETs that are absolutely great people.
Yeah.
He must have had some friendship.
John had really good Andromedan and really good Pleiadian friends. And so there's a number of Pleiadians incarnate on the planet too, or some of them come through. I have to learn to shut my mouth a little bit. Sometimes I say things that maybe shouldn't be in the public space, but we are talking about
war it down.
So there are a number of portals on the earth that you just with a walking guide you can go, and you can go to another planet, or people can come from other planets. So the ETs have always been here, and let's go back to Chris Carter and everything. One of the things that the powers that be are doing, is they're trying to cultivate a narrative that suggests the ETs are coming to visit us now, obfuscating the narrative that they've always been here and really been, management in the farm system, and the ones that visit and don't interfere just look at what's happening here as part of the karmic process and don't see it as horrible or anything like that. I don't see it as horrible anymore. I don't see this planet, in a very negative way. Although everybody I've worked with who has told me, well, it's a hot house, it's a greenhouse, they grow genetics, they harvest psychic energy, loosh or whatever. Still, it's so beautiful here, and it's just incredible, this planet, I think, and I don't let these things bother me that much. But yeah.
And it comes around again, doesn't it, to the law of the universe. What you look at looks back at you. And if you do go into that rabbit hole of seeing all this information, but all you're doing is reading information like the negative stuff, your life is going to be negative. And like Andrew talks about the neutral teachings, and that's, for me, the conspiracy. I don't really read much into it, but now and then I'll have a look, but I make sure I don't put my effort and energy into that, because my reality completely changes.
So the truth I came to with all of this stuff, let's call it some negative fourth dimensional stuff, and a little bit above the fourth dimension too. And you can throw, malignant dead human beings in, you can throw demons in, you can throw negative extraterrestrials in.
Earth.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. Inner Earth as well. The way I balanced it all out and came to peace with it was there really is a way to look at it where it all makes sense, right? So what you got to do is you got to apply the law of economy to it. And the law of economy is like, well, what is the economy and what is the necessity? Now, they created maybe a bad karmic situation where some of these fourth dimensional entities, they need to rob energy from the third dimension to survive. It's kind of like a crackhead stealing your TV. You know, do you really, he's an addict, you know, it would be great if he could go do an Ibogaine ceremony and get over his crack addiction, but he hasn't done that yet. And, you know, you can't get angry. You can't get upset. It happened. Right. And that's how I came to see a lot of these things, is that there's, in this planet we live in, there's a lot of things around us that are still existing, but need to maintain an economic or an energetic economy with the third dimension to survive. This is also the explanation for the loosh harvesting as well. There's whole worlds out there that can't generate their own energy to sustain themselves. So they have to come and farm psychic energy here to sustain the bubble reality they're living in. So this is how I came to understand it. And it was when I understood it through this economic lens, there was a tremendous amount of forgiveness and understanding. And it's just like, oh, the poor bastard, man, like the crack addict. Oh, you poor bastard. You know, I really hope you can get out of this. And until that time, I guess you're going to be boosting TVs, you know? So
for that perspective, I find it really exciting. That's what I find it. Because when I stand outside of my house and I can see the ships fly over, a lot of time they'll make themselves known, you know, and I'm standing there and I'm looking at and I'm thinking about all the stuff that's going on underneath my feet, all the commerce and the bits and bobs, all the energy that's moving around me. Then when out there, all the traffic that's moving, that comes from our planet, all the spaceships coming out, coming back in, all the different, because there's more traffic going on out there from these guys than what we've got. And we're living in this little pony show that everyone believes in, this little play, you know? And sometimes I'm just standing here looking out, actually aware of all of this that's going on and seeing it happening, little bits and bobs of it. And, you know, and just be in awe of the whole thing, actually. At least I know it. I'm down here, I know all about it, and I'm able to experience it from this perspective. You know, it does seem awful looking at them lot who just believe that's the totality of reality. Yeah. You know,
we're some kind of spectacular galactic show, this planet. We're like their drive-in. This is like whatever, it's just whatever's going on here. A lot of things are very interested in it, and there is, you know, so anyways, I don't want to hijack the process. You guys, some knowledge you want to extract about Stardust. So I was going to go in a different direction and talk about, you know, something new I'm discovering living in the jungle here, which is like elementals. But we'll save that for maybe another show next year or something. But what's your next question about Stardust Ranch?
I would love to have your opinion at yours, Bruce, and everyone's about the samurai sword, which just appeared off a truck on the he just literally came across a samurai sword, and then he had was it the Brandy who came over and she had those swords, was it those, and all of that corresponding? What's your view on that, Bruce?
Were they real samurai swords, like old ones, antiques?
It was actually a real samurai sword. Whether it was made to the specifications of the samurai with the metal folding and the metal cleaning, getting the carbon out of it and everything, which is an unbelievably artistic metallurgical process, the way they make those swords. Whether it was authentic or not, I don't know, but it was a samurai sword. It was the same dimension, the same handle, and I suspect it was just some, you know, lower grade metal knockoff that you could probably buy for $200 or $300. Like a real samurai sword would be $500,000 or more.
But they can be seeded through time, you know. They can be put in the right hands at the right time. They time travel.
Let's give him a samurai. The bullets aren't working.
The samurai sword will want the grey heads. It will want the grey heads. It'll be like, I want that on my journey, man.
So the sword getting and then connecting it to Brandy, as everyone on this show knows, the sword is the universal weapon, right? So it's the universal weapon of let's say, I don't know what word I would use, the defenders or the righteous.
Truth.
Or
Truth.
Yeah.
Truth. Yeah.
Oh, true. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
True.
my
Yeah.
So it was very well served in John's hands, and you know what? That's going to sound a bit opportunistic and maybe even a bit creepy, given that he passed February 28th. But I wouldn't mind getting that sword. I mean, I'm actually going to, after this show, I'm actually going to send Joyce a message like, "What are you doing with the sword?" Imagine trying to get that through Costa Rica customs.
Seen some unusual action, that sword.
Man, it'll be one day. You could tuck that in a box, and then one day it'll be worth a shit ton of money.
Oh yeah, but just to have it as a little part of John and his legacy. But the universe found the right hands to put that sword in, I'll tell you.
Yes, it's a great sword.
Totally.
And that's it. He felt, for me, what attracted me to John specifically is frequency and the way he talked. I don't really watch many people. I watch Andrew, a few other teachers, and as soon as I heard him speaking, I heard his intent and I heard his philosophy about life and just how much, like you say, he was a super soldier, he was a warrior, and he knew that through and through. And for John, it was just, this is the way, this is the way, there's no other way, and stuff like that. And from reading the book and listening to how it corresponded with him learning about himself while he was there throughout the years, and his correspondence of how it connected to kind of the culture and the reality of what we were going through. So for me, the pheromone of him speaking and talking, you could tell he just doesn't, there's no shits given, and he is who he is, and he's so authentic. And that's what really I appreciate about him. He just says it how it fucking is. There's no sugarcoating about it. And he talks about the new age community of how he fucking hates it and all of that, all of this bullshit. And I'm just like, yes, this guy's incredible.
Yeah. So John, he was absolutely incredible. Very, that's the super tough side of John. He had a very worshipful side, a very prayer centric side, a very, very reverential and ritual side, very much in keeping with Andrew's teachings. He basically self-taught. He learned how to do these rituals and balance himself. He knew about the power of water. He knew about the power of fire, the power of air, like everything. He had an incredible amount of teaching. So he had a charmed life right from the very, I'm not sure it is charmed, but he had a really extraordinary life right from the beginning. And, one of my favorite things about knowing John and writing the book and talking to him was a lot of the stuff that didn't end up in the book. Like, so in the 70s and 80s, John ran a promotion company that did the setup for concerts in Chicago and other parts of the United States. I mean, he knew and partied with everybody. Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, Joan Baez, everybody. And you know what he told me? He told me in the rock and roll world, in like the roadies and the people around the bands, he said it was loaded with extraterrestrials. A lot of them were extraterrestrials. And it's these little things that like only, there are two people who say things that hit me coming from I never expect what they're going to say. Okay. And you know who the other one is? It's Andrew Bartzis, and the other one was John Edmonds. And then you get you go, what the hell? And I'm thinking, is this true? And I'm going, well, who the hell could make this up? A lot of roadies are extraterrestrial. Who would make that up? Like, what would be the motive? It's got to be true, right? And then you hear more contactees as they begin to tell their stories, as the world opens up and everything. A lot of people will tell you that, when we talk about extraterrestrials in the human habit, we talk about, benign and malignant, good and bad. But there's a whole bunch of neutrals that come here just to have a sex, drug, and rock and roll experience. Like planet Earth is like, it's like some kind of nightclub for these people or something like this, right? And there's an energy.
And pizza.
There's something about, again, going back to the menstrual blood with the Greys and everything. There's something about the human sexual exchange and the energy in it that's very attractive to a lot of the ETs.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how other races reproduce. Maybe they pull their young out of a garden, roots and all. I don't know, but there's something about the way we do it that I think the whole galaxy is jealous.
I'm gonna have to.
Kundalini energy, isn't it? The Kundalini energy that you talked about in the book, that John spoke about in the book.
Yeah. Well, I mean that. Well, yeah. I mean that. There's many ways to look at that, right? And then we get in. Boy, Laura, you just accidentally took me to a very dark place there, because that's what a lot of the pedophilia and energy harvesting is about, right?
Spoke about that, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
You know, we practice that on a positive way, Bruce. You know, I have sex rituals that I do that are positive, and I use it to charge myself up with energy. And now my own personal process is extremely powerful, and I can get myself into a massively high volume of light. I just don't give any of it away, you know. And then there's no thought, there's no projection. So it's you know, it's not all a negative thing. It's you know, it's just, it's in our face everywhere we look. They've infiltrated everything, haven't they? You know, but I don't think they're as powerful as they make out.
No, I would agree. They're not as powerful as they make out. But yeah, it probably has something to do with the Kundalini energy. I mean, sex is an inherently multidimensional experience, right? So, and it's a very powerful experience. Human sexuality is very powerful. You know, something just popped into my mind. The Daryl Hannah character in the original, you know, Blade Runner, the Nexus 6 pleasure model. It's almost like the human skin suit is some kind of galactic pleasure model, and ETs come here, right? So it's interesting.
From now on, when my partner Gabrielle's on the menstrual cycle, I'll be throwing away straight away the bin. I don't want to be attracted to these greys. I'll be throwing them straight out.
You can go and find yourself a samurai sword.
You just
get a samurai sword. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
And a question I was not going to ask, but I feel like I will ask this, and I think Andrew brushed up upon it a little bit, was the irony of obviously the book coming out and John passing and everything like that throughout that period of time. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know a lot of people will be conspiracy talking about that and that era of time when John passed away.
Okay, Dale, this is a hard question. I mean, hard emotionally, intellectually, it's very facile. So about 2 years after the book came out, or actually 2.5 years after the book came out. So the book came out December 31st, 2019. Galactic Historian came out June 12th, 2021. A couple months after the Galactic Historian came out, there was tremendous motion on Stardust, meaning it started to garner a lot of interest. We had TV producers approach us, and we had a couple of scientists. One was a postgraduate doctoral fellow at the Harvard Medical School, and the other one was a guy working in the private sector doing funded research who had a PhD in medical physics. And they contacted, now you've all read the book, and you remember what I said about the medical Harvard school. So this is how this, I wake up one morning, there's a LinkedIn message from a guy his title is postdoctoral fellow, Harvard Medical School. You know, I won't give his name. He says, "Hi, Bruce, I'd like to talk to you about Stardust Ranch. Would you be available?" And I'm thinking, oh, now Harvard finally got around to reading the book and they're pissed because I went through the whole John Mack thing and everything. And so, no, but that wasn't the case. This guy is actually a very spiritual fellow, a Sri Lankan fellow, a Buddhist, and was thrilled with the book. And they wanted to do this research. And then simultaneously at the same time, these TV producers came in. And at every stage, I had to push John a little bit. Like he had kind of limits. He had a duty to get his story out, and he was very happy with the book. But getting it out beyond that, John, I think, I don't want to say anything. He had trust issues with the world of commerce, contracts, TV shows, things. He had trust issues with these people. That's one dimension of it. Here's what he told me in a private call. He said, Bruce, if we go forward with this, we're going to upset the balance of things. I've kind of achieved a truce with this ranch. I'm allowed to tell the world what's going on here. So when you write a book, it's sort of a voluntary thing. You know, people have to make an effort to read a book. Number one, they have to buy it or borrow it from a friend. And number two, they have to devote, depending on how fast they read, 4, 6, 8 hours. It's a big investment. It's not like binge watching a Netflix series or something. So because of the very nature of writing, you're not forcing things on anybody. You're not forcing your story. You're not giving it away too easily. And the people who find it and absorb it were meant to find, and it's not really sort of upsetting the whole ecosystem of Stardust Ranch. He said, when the academics come in and the TV people come in, I'm going to end up in a big war on the ranch. And I said, John, it's your call. I said, I'm happy to have helped you write this book. You know me, John. I make my living technical writing. I have a good trade. I don't need the TV money. It's your call. And he waited about a week and he said, okay, let's go ahead and do it. And then he got killed, and they killed him. There's no doubt about it. You know, after the reading Melissa and Andrew gave on the memorial show for John, he did not die accidentally. It was not his time. He was taken out. Mm-hmm. And I've always had a little bit of issue with that, you know, because if I had to, I think now if I had told him, well, let's not do the TV series, let's not do but I used to come back with like, well, why did you write the book if you didn't want to get your story? I kind of prodded him a little bit. And I've had to deal with some of that since he passed. Now, John's around all the time. He can visit and clean up this energy and say, don't worry about it. You know, I made a free will choice. Stop martyring yourself, Bruce, and stuff like that. But there are conspiracy theorists think the world is run by a small group of people, but it's not the case. It's series of groups and energy constructs and things like this. And Stardust Ranch is an example of this. Okay. Now, one of the reasons Stardust Ranch is protected and guarded so much by the ETs is that it is still, since we've all read the Galactic Historian here, so we know that a lot of the genetic material trade on this planet has been shut down, but there are still smuggling rat holes. Okay, Stardust Ranch is a smuggling rat hole. Okay,
it's profitable place,
and this is why Andrew continually referred as a cartel war there. Because it's almost, you know, smuggling the human DNA and whatever other astral parts of humans they move around. It's no different than the Colombian cocaine trade or anything. It's smuggling. And there are forces of balance and law on the other side that are hunting these smugglers as well. And John Edmonds is smack dab in the middle of all this, holding his ground with a samurai sword and a kennel full of Rottweilers. You know,
this is enough, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
So the timeline, Bruce, there was, so when the book came out, how long ago? When did he pass? How long after the book was released?
So the book came out December 30. You're going to have to do the math. I'm horrible at math. Yeah. It's one of the consequences of having a writing gift. You get by with grade 9 math skills. The book came out December 31st, 2019, and John died February 28th, 2022.
Wow. So yeah, 2 months.
Well, no, 2 years.
2 years, sorry, yeah, sorry.
Well, 2020, 2021, just 3 years and a bit, or just under 3 years.
And what was when you said there was a TV program in process, what was happening with that when that was going on? Was it in the midst of being made and created and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, they had started negotiation. There was one overseer producer who had a record of performance in this field, had TV shows. And then she brought in a married couple from LA, and we started having Skype conversations. And then they actually went out to Stardust Ranch, and they didn't stay at the ranch. They stayed at a hotel, but they did visit during the day and spend time on the ranch. And I mean, this was in full development, and they had an offer on the table and everything. But John refused to sell his rights. Right. He would not sell the rights unless he maintained absolute control of the story. So, you know, the same story we hear from all kinds of people in the 20th century engaging with Hollywood, you know. I think the best example I can think of it on the top of my head is the brilliant Coen brothers movie, Bart and Fink, you know, but the New York playwright going to Hollywood. So John had his own Hollywood battle, but they were willing to work with him to some degree, and the negotiations were ongoing, and then he was killed.
Can you imagine, Bruce, if you were a drug dealer and that was your main port, that's where everything came in, everything came out, that was the only place you could do it, right? And then all of a sudden you knew there was going to be camera crews coming in. And even if it was one of those shows that took the mickey out of it, then you're definitely going to start having idiots turn up everywhere, filming it, kids driving around, camping out at night. You know, all this stuff's going to start to happen. And, you know, if that's their main port of that kind of economy, then
Maddie, it already was. Just with the book, it already was. People were coming in camper vans and spending the night outside his gate, and I was hearing these stories all the time. You know, and I mean, just imagine being, you know, four or six people in a Volkswagen van. You've driven like over 5 states to go see Stardust Ranch. You're camped out in front. It's 12 o'clock at night, and John Edmonds shows up at the side window with a shotgun. What the hell are you doing here?
Rottweilers filing over Cape, barking through like, what the fuck are you doing?
He was doing him a kindness. He was doing him a kindness in all reality.
Yeah. Like these look, you don't want to tinker with these forces too much. You don't, you know, it's a tremendous curiosity, but you know, Andrew gives very, very sound advice and caution about curiosity, learning, and stuff like that, right? If you're meant to interact with ETs, it'll come about. I've never met anyone who's meditated consistently longer than 5 years who doesn't have ET experiences. As soon as you raise your vibration a little bit, they're going to come and check you out.
Yeah.
Right. And this is what happened to me in 2003 when I came home from the 12-week writing retreat, and I was just completely lit up. And so the ETs were checking me out. Right. So if you're on a path to consciousness, you're going to go through your own version of the ET movement. The only reason, and it's part of our birthright to be able to interact with these beings and to be able to use them as an adjunct to our human experience, to ask questions. Once we open up, when this Kali Yuga, Dark Age, or whatever it is done, and we go, this is going to be normal. People are going to look back at the Dark Ages, where we didn't have this galactic consciousness as part of our birthright, as extremely primitive and dark, like the Dark Ages. So everybody's going to start having ET experiences because human consciousness is involuntarily rising now. It's just part of adios, mi amor. Okay, bye-bye. Just going over to her mother's house. So you know, so I had my ET experiences already. I started, you know, my spiritual journey at 17, turning 18, but I've had a whole bunch of experiences other than ETs. There's a lot of stuff out there other than ETs, you know, I mean, and so I find the whole ET thing a little bit fascinating, and how it just fascinates people. And I would say to people, look, if you're overly fascinated about this, and you've been like an ET groupie for years, but you've never had an experience, maybe just let it go for a while. Maybe it's not all that healthy for you. And you know, and really what it signals, if you're not having the experiences and interacting with them, and you're an ET groupie, really what it tells me is you're not happy with your human life, and you're looking for something else, some type of escape. So get the happiness, balance, and grounding in your life. Those ETs will find you. They're very sociable, very sociable.
I have to interject here as well, because the thing is with ET contact is the type of contact you can have is down to your DNA as well. Your DNA attracts certain types. So, you know, some people could have more prone to negative ET interactions, other people positive. But, you know, if you haven't done any form of self-mastery for any small amount of time, or even, you know, medium amount of time, then it can lean towards the negative. You know, you work your way up towards that positive interaction, and it will happen eventually, but not if you're trying to make it happen. That's the thing. And when you're pushing it, that's when usually someone will come knocking who really, you don't really want hanging about.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do have a negative experience, I mean, take a page out of John Edmonds' book,
Yeah,
okay?
still experience.
Don't be afraid, man. Stand your ground. And that's the rule of thumb for everything. Malignant spirits on the other side, demonic. Stand your ground, man. Don't be arrogant about it, but stand your sovereign ground. That's the advice Alex Collier, it's the advice every contactee gives. And John Edmonds doubles down on that, whether or not you have a samurai sword.
It's all about boundaries. It's all about boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Dale, do you have a sequence of questions you're getting to, or can I just freeform jazz here?
Yeah, I've got quite a few questions.
Sure.
Still quite a lot of questions to go.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
So the ranch at the moment, because I added John on Facebook, and I think his wife's taken over his Facebook account. And she's been posting looking for donations. What's the update on her? Is it what I'm thinking is they're trying to take the ranch off her basically, and
they're going to it's going to go into some kind of public auction or semi-public auction, and probably some arm of US intelligence will take it over under the guise of a corporation or something, and maybe that's for the best, okay? Because I'm not sure human beings should be going there and screwing around too much and stuff like that, right? So there's a bit of sadness in that story, but on the other hand, I think it's really good if Joyce gets off the ranch now that John's gone. He was a lot of protection for her psychically and physically, and I think the sooner she gets off the ranch, the better, right? I speak to her about once every month, twice a month. I mean, that book, its sales, it's just as consistent as a Polish pension. It comes in every month. It beguiles me because we're not doing any marketing, and it just keeps selling about the same amount every month, which is about $500 US. I refer to it as like my old age pension. It just keeps coming in, and I'm going, well, it's all just word of mouth, and that kind of organic marketing is the best to be a part of. And it's more like a kind of like a cult phenomenon, like Buckaroo Banzai or Blade Runner, the movie, before it caught on. And I like that. It makes me feel good as a writer,
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to ask the question as well. So the time period of when you stopped talking to John, you're about to start the book, and something happened. What happened then when you stopped writing and you connected again in the future with him?
Okay, so we were introduced by a mutual friend, and my friend, huge into spirituality movement, very interesting guy in his own right. He lives in Hawaii. He called me up one day. Now he had read God as an Economist, Laura, and he had gotten to know John. He was an adept UFO researcher himself. He had friends who'd been locked up in asylums because they captured video and it was too early. And this is late. Anyway, huge figure in the ET community. Calls me up one day. He says, "Look, I got a story for you." I said, I'll say his first name. I said, Tommy, I don't do nonfiction. I'm a novel writer. I'm Ernest Hemingway. I don't do this kind of writing. He says, "Oh, you got to see that. You're not going to believe this story. This guy's killing gray aliens with a samurai sword, and you're not going to believe it." And they got DNA, and they sent the DNA to a lab in Michigan. Bruce, you got to write this. Just do me a favor and meet the guy. I said, "Okay, I'll meet the guy." So we set up a Skype call, and I met John, and I went, "Yeah, there's something really weird going on here." I said, "Okay, I'm going to do this story. I do have a journalism degree. I don't have a master's in fine arts, creative writing. Maybe I should do this book. I know how to write nonfiction. I paid $40,000 in student loans to learn how to write nonfiction, so I may as well try this book." Got into the book, and I am telling you, this was about 2012, okay? And my skin was just crawling, and I could not control my fear. And it was drawing all kinds of things in. Now, for those people always ask me, well, where's the genetic material? Where are the alien bodies, Bruce? Well, for a while, he kept them in his freezer, but generally they were shipped out, okay? So he shipped them out to a guy who was a botanist by the name of Dr. Levengood in Michigan. Now, Dr. Levengood was a classically trained botanist who got interested in the UFO field about 5 years before meeting John Edmonds, because he had done some research in crop analysis at a cellular and molecular level on crop circles. And he said, okay, there's really something to this. So this was the genesis for John to go public, because he didn't want to go public and face ridicule. He wanted to go public with evidence. So this is how him and Tommy got the book going. Okay. So in tandem with the release of this book, there would be physical evidence. Okay. So I'm working on the book for like 4 or 5 months, 6 months, maybe. And I'm talking to John Edmonds 2-3 hours a day, recording the Skype conversations, transcribing them, and building chapters. So at the end of this process, Dr. Levengood and his wife died suddenly. And when I say suddenly, I mean, and I'm not joking, when slipped on a banana peel and cracked their head open, one of them. Okay. That's what I mean by sudden, which is a little. And when that happened, with my skin crawling already and everything, when Dr. Levengood was out of the picture, I used it as an excuse. I said, well, we don't have the evidence anymore. I'm not putting my name behind this book. This is just crazy. But really, I was afraid. And here I am up here in the beginning of 2019. And it just starts again in my head. First of all, there's a lot of orbs here. So there were orbs over my house. And then it got me thinking about 2012 and working with John Edmonds. And I said, okay, I'm going to give him a call and I'm going to finish this book, because I'm in a very safe place now, spiritually protected. And I'm a different person than I was in 2012. And I'm going to write the book now. And that's when I called him and decided to write the book. But the general reason I quit was it was just too frightening. It was, and the botanist and his wife died within a week of each other, and all the lab material disappeared. Mm-hmm. So they're. Yeah. Just give me a moment. I got to think about this. See, I don't want to put any fear out there. But look, I don't know what's going on now in 2022, how heavily these things are policed, but in 2012 they were. And if you were going to go public with evidence, like real evidence of ETs, physical evidence, there was a good chance you would. It was very much like the free energy movement in the 50s, where people would develop water cars and stuff like this. The first visit is, hey, we'll give you $1 million for that. You made that in your, the second visit is, you can't take this to market. The third visit is, you're dead. It's the same thing with the ET movement. So Dr. Levengood was killed. So you may ask yourself, well, why didn't they just kill John Edmonds? Good luck with that.
Like killing Bruce Lee. How long it took them to get Bruce Lee?
I think they were very afraid of John, and it's not like there weren't shots taken at him. That's described. And imagine just going about your business one day, and you're walking between your house and your bodega where you keep your saddles and everything, and suddenly there's a sniper shooting at you. Right? This was John Edmonds' life. It wasn't just the ETs. He was physically attacked as well. Right? It's like really the ultimate warrior in many ways,
And any questions, Laura, Maty, or anything you want to ask about as well?
Just, there are times, Bruce, despite, you could say, the gravity of the subject, that I wanted to burst out laughing with some of it. I mean, you can't, just how he was and what he did was just so larger than life. And one of those is the Mormon gentleman.
Oh, that yes, that was one of my favourite bits. Spoiler alert.
So that was one, and then obviously when he learned to control his thoughts, so the Greys couldn't tell what he was thinking and where he was going, and how he surprised them. There are some moments I did actually burst out laughing. So I think there is levity in the book. Not just joy.
Yes.
There is other levity in the book.
So just briefly for the listeners who haven't read the book yet, the Mormon bishop for that area of Arizona came out with 2 Mormons to do an exorcism. And just imagine this, okay? So a normal social visit, Joyce would go to the kitchen probably to make coffee and maybe a little bit of snack food for them. And they commence their feeling out of the ranch and everything. And before the coffee and biscuits are ready or anything, the 3 Mormons are in the van like the Scooby-Doo team taking off. And John's like, I don't think we're going to need that coffee, Joyce.
Or
Oh
the
my
cable
God.
guy, with the TV guy or the electrician, it's the same sort of thing, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Sir, we don't like to come out here. It's got a very bad reputation. And then why there were so many phone lines in the house, because it was an off-site gambling den and a bordello, and just unbelievable.
And you've got to think as well, like even Joyce, talk about Joyce for a bit of how strong of a person she is, and for someone to hold and obviously her being part of John's life was his backbone, and obviously she was there through it all. And for the credit to Joyce, because what an exceptional woman, what a great woman to be able to go through all of that and keep sane, because a lot of people who visit the ranch, they've gone, was it those Syrians, one of them went away and got psychotic because they had and it gets to you, doesn't it, if you're not strong enough. And them 2 were so strong to be able to do that. And I think someone shot themselves, didn't they, before he lived there. So for them to, and Joyce, just hats off to Joyce really for what she's done and how strong she's been through it.
Yeah. So one of the Syrians went underground with his family, and the other one was institutionalized after that, the Purple Lightning Day. Brandy lost her memory for 3 or 4 years. Joyce tells a story. I don't think it's in the book, but just talking to her, she tells a story of like a year after the incident, bumping into Brandy, I think at a New Age bookstore in Phoenix or something, and Brandy had very little recollection of it. It took 4 years for the memory to. I mean, she got blasted by purple lightning, went through the ground, through and
her shoes, didn't it?
Yeah. It's in the cartoon.
That is in the book. What Joyce says, that is in the book.
Yeah, in the afterward. Yeah.
Sorry, Bruce. Her calmness to come home with what he showed her he'd done that day. And she was very matter of fact and very calm about this, the situation.
Just got something chilling in the freezer. What is it?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cool.
It became their normal, right? So I mean, they lived it for 25 years, and Joyce is still living it. Although I think John on the other side is policing that for her. I don't think too much will be bothering her. I think he's much more powerful. Basically, it's the Obi-Wan Kenobi story, right? I think he's much more powerful on the other side now, right? Yep. And I feel him around me every once in a while. He's popped in a couple times even since my dad passed, just to say, hey, man, it's natural. Don't worry about it. It's all cool on the other side. He'll do his, and he's around. He's dropping in on Melissa and Andrew all the time. So, and his suffering is over, right? I mean, John was always a huge man, nearly 300 pounds. And at the end, he was down to like 145 pounds. Wow. And this was due to illnesses that had come about in the last 2 years before his death, right? So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I love talking about the guy, man. I love celebrating his life, and I'm very honored to be able to do it. It's just one of these great people in history that society doesn't even have the consciousness yet to understand why he was great, right? But they will in the future as more and more people begin having these experiences, which are going to happen. Inevitably, they're going to start happening as the whole communication spectrum with this race opens up, and we're taken out of isolation and lockdown, so to speak. People will remember John Edmonds quite fondly as an early pioneer of this kind of living and consciousness, perhaps involuntarily.
And that bit, what gave me the chills, and I'm not gonna lie, I got a bit scared. There was a slight moment where my little fear child came out, and I went, holy shit. Was the part where he went for a meal, and he turns his phone on, and he gets a missed call from his wife, and he's meant to be out with Joyce, and he realizes obviously they go to the toilet, and that was just like, it's like a movie. It gave me the chilly willies, and I was just like, fuck.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah. It happened to both of them. So there were doppelganger Johns that appeared to Joyce, and there was doppelganger Joyces that appeared to John. And I had never heard anything like that in my life. Subsequent to writing Stardust Ranch, I have heard a little bit about it now. I've tuned into it in the occult lore. That it is possible to fabricate a second body like that temporarily. There are entities and beings out there that can do it, but it's just a creep show, man. You know,
most ETs can literally manifest however they want. They can change their physical. It's just the light. They can do it. They can come up to you however they want. I
think I remember Andrew saying Greys are one of those who can zip up a suit. They actually have a zip up suit.
Yeah.
Remember saying that?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're like the mechanical beings, aren't they? What don't really have a tree of life. They just literally go in, put the suit on, and they can have many different consciousnesses actually in there, not just one. There could be up to 30 or 20 different consciousness in the actual Grey. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Human beings are so easy to trick. They really are.
Yeah. And then another thing I learned from John, it's not as much in the book. It is a little bit when we get into Crossroads and the later chapters. Crossroads, it really is a one-to-one match with what Andrew was saying about what the Industrial Revolution had done to the human consciousness. So I already had this bridge to Andrew's work, right? Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Sorry. I get excited and I just lose it. What were we talking about?
I'll tell you what, man, the air around me is freaky deaky right now, mate. Honestly, as we're talking about this, all the stuff that's going on around in my sort of unseen world is absolutely nuts.
Can I just be honest with you? What experience that happened? I looked quite shocked and got a bit spooked out, because I'm looking out at the sky now and it's clear and there's a huge cloud, and I could tell it was a ship. And while you were talking, Bruce, this was about 10 minutes ago. I wasn't going to talk about it, but I've looked up, and as soon as I looked down and looked up, it disappeared. And I'm not taught, it was a humongous cloud, which you could tell was a ship, and it's completely gone now, and I can't see it. And I'll try and record it my face when I look up, and I start looking a bit freaked out, like, what's going on here?
It's going on in this too, man. I've had John come in, and there's been all these other sort of, I don't know, some not nice ones, then some nice ones, and it's been just like a light show. It was a really unique experience.
He's a controversial figure even over there on the other side still. And I remember what I was talking about now, like the Crossroads chapter and how we get into all of this stuff. And look, it's really funny to hear John like describe his encounters with Palladians and stuff like that, because he had a lot of encounters with Nordics as well. And he said, look, I mean, I said, well, why don't they help us, John? Stupid, naive freshman question. He goes, he says, Bruce, he says to them, we're kind of like a dog stuck in a 4-lane traffic. And like, well, do you risk getting hit by a car to go out there and save the dog, or do you just let the fate line work out? And I thought that was a little bit cold at the time, but I've grown into it. I understand what he meant. We're on our own. And this is why spiritual work is so important. Stop asking other people for help, except maybe the Creator and your prayers and your guardians and stuff. Do your spiritual work, man. Okay? And stop asking for this is what they conditioned in the 20th century, was some institutional figure will fix this. Well, the government must know how to fix this, And this is what the X-Files and these shows do, is they create the confidence in people. Oh, the government's got this all handled. We have a special. No, they don't. You're on your own. And the only thing you have to fight back with is your own consciousness and your own spirit. So start your work, start your journey. It's important. I used to say to my son, when I started meditating at 17 years old in 1982, it was a lifestyle choice. I'd say in 2022, it's self-defense now. If you don't have a spiritual life going on now, you're going to get braced. You know, what do I mean? You know, what do I mean by braced? I mean, like taken into the corner hard and rough, like in a hockey game with the cross checking and everything. You're going to get braced, you know, and maybe this is what the human race needs. Maybe a little fear shake is what some people need to, you know, the sort of Zen whack with the whack with the bamboo stick by the Zen master when you're deviating from your meditation. Maybe that's what the human race needs now.
Or
you
backed
know?
into the corner, Bruce, backed into the corner. If you back enough people into a corner, then somebody's going to charge, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But you know what? We mustn't pick a fight. That's the fundamental to all of this. It comes with the ET contact and that as well.
Sacred neutral.
Yeah, he was defending his land. Okay, he was defending his land. Very different thing. No one was going to help him because no one could talk about what was going on. But you know, as a personal practitioner, you know, just don't pick a fight, because if you pick a fight, you'll get a fight, and you have to be very aware of the subtleties of how you can pick a fight. You know, even if it's with yourself, it always ends badly. You know, always ends badly. But when it's the other way around, you just try to be better. Even if you fail, try again, fail, try again, and it always leads you to another direction. And the world, as crazy as it is out there, is what it is out there. But you view it in a completely different way to the majority of the other people do. Even just with, you know, even just with a few years of gentle practice, surely you're going to have a different point of view. You're just not getting bounced off the wall by everything that everyone's saying.
And I think it's also, you know, how do you want to see the universe expand? Because we're intrinsically linked to the expansion of the universe through our consciousness. So we have a choice of how we want to interact or to exchange energy or, you know, whatever with the universe. What do we want to create? Because the universe is creating, it's ever flowing.
And that's
it's that never-ending story again.
And the era of light we're in now, so we don't actually have to fight anymore. Maybe before, thousands of years ago, when the world was a different place, we had to fight and we had to stand our ground. But now, like Andrew talks about CERN, I think on I heard him, I think he was on a show last week, and he talked about the update of CERN, and he said basically they've got them by the bottleneck, that they won't be doing anything magnificent like they did in 2013, or they will get taken out on all space, times, dimensions. CERN will just get obliterated. So it feels like no fight is the fight now. And like you say, Bruce, self-mastery, self-healing is the way to engage and reach the stars, really.
Very, very timely comment. It's the 4th today, and that CERN thing is supposed to happen tomorrow on the 5th.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the time. Andrew's right. It's the time of the peacemaker. Okay. We all need to become peacemakers now. There's no, you know, and this ties, boy, this is huge. Let's bring this right back to normal human stuff. Huge in the passing of my father. I need to make peace with this bastard, you know, and peace is what it's all about now. Evening out your karma, admitting what you did, letting go of your stubbornness and all of these sorts of things, everything. If it's true for your dad when he passes, it's true for the ETs that pop in.
And going back to CERN, I think I remember what he talked about now was 2013, 2014. Basically, CERN turned on and it started using timeline stuff. It started fucking with the timelines, and now it was about to do that again. But all the galactic beings and people who are obviously here basically said to CERN, if you turn this shit on, we're going to take you out and take all CERN out in all space times and realities. So it feels like we have won. We've really won in a way. It's just now self-mastery. It's about us realizing how much of a master we are instead of the external taking over us anymore.
And
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, there was I think what happens, the light that comes in, 2013, 2014 was a really expansive time. You know, it was an incredible time. The dream world was nuts. The time of the event as well. And what they were trying to do is it's like there was so much light coming in that CERN was able to kind of block it out. So you just miss a fraction of the code that you're supposed to be getting, just small pieces, you know? Yeah. But now I think it's time that this just got to happen. They can't keep the code, but you know, it's time though, isn't it, as well? It's not just now, it's all these other times as well. You know, all interacting together. It's so huge. It's just so difficult to even get your head around. And I think it's the importance of why we're doing this stuff that we do nowadays. You know, even if not that many people see it, it'll be there for the future. Because as this stuff becomes more known and people start to practice, then all this stuff is going to be out there for them already. You know, it's a hard thing to learn, isn't it? It's a hard thing to learn. It takes many, many years, especially, you know, along with the self-mastery as well. coupled along with all of the learning of the new terminologies and the wisdom and the different teachings and applying them. It's a big, big job. And, you know, I think it's good for those people in the future that don't know about it yet. There should be an infrastructure there for them. And I guess that is the Great Awakening, really. That's how we get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel compelled to say something here. I'm on my own path. I've benefited enormously from being the Galactic Historian. And I just want to say that, you know, getting to know you guys, I bear witness. Andrew's material, if applied with discipline, works faster than almost any other path on the planet. You are all beautifully unfolded people. I've been schlepping away at my meditation path for 35 years. You guys are there in 2 years, you know?
Well, it took me 10, 9 or 10 years.
Yeah, it really works. If you connect with Andrew's material and you find it fascinating reading the Galactic Historian, start the practices. And his practical spiritual path is all free on paper. You can download the revocations, and I think he's offering the mystical life now. But it's very, very powerful material, folks, and very rapid. Make sure
sorry, Bruce.
Make sure you're ready for it, though, because it will be phenomenological. This is not a belief system. It's not. It's not Maddie's dad. It's not a book. You're stuff's gonna pop into your life, man.
Right, and the great thing about it is that what he's given out for free is everything you need to actually become a master of your own reality. You can chop and change it, fix it to your own means, but the other stuff that he offers takes you above and beyond a bit quicker.
Oh yeah.
You kind of get there and then have to catch up with yourself, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Another incredible figure in our timeline, Andrew Bartzis, and it was really a pleasure for me to facilitate the meeting between him and John, and to sit on the Skype call for 4 hours. We were all crying.
Did you record it?
We'll pay money for
never invaded privacy like that. It was never invaded privacy like that. I went through 2 or 3 crying bouts. It was extremely powerful, man. Extremely powerful. Yeah.
He really has. And for me, I think the last, when my father died, I had a session with Andrew probably about 4 weeks after. And he gave me so many things to ponder on about my own life and about my journey. And the stuff I'm doing now, I teach psychic surgery advanced training. And as well as the psychic surgery stuff, the discipline and the schedule comes along with that. And I remember being at a low point and I just felt in limbo, and I had the session, I was just flat, and I just said, I feel so strange. I just don't have any emotion. And at the end, he drops a little nugget there just to plant that little seed in my mind. And that was it. From that expansion, from that darker time, he's really, I'd say him personally has helped me find self-mastery, self-healing, and actually realize how powerful I am, and I am a being of truth. I am a being of love. I've had so many fucking things go on in my life, and like you say, Bruce, back to the teachings, back to the discipline, back to having variety in the schedule. For me, it took probably, I'd say, 2 years for my repetition with illumination to come, where I was like, every single ounce I put extra into me, I was like, wow. I was like, this is why I'm fucking doing it. And I remember hearing repetition with illumination 8-9 years ago, and I said, I wonder what that feels like. And I started feeling it. I was like, holy shit, like this is it.
Nice. Yeah, I see all your pictures on Facebook, Dale, when you go on your sweat lodges and stuff. Everybody looks just so lit up, so happy.
It really is. And the first session I had with him was my instant gratification questions. And they completely changed. I listened to myself. I'm like, what the fuck am I asking? Like, I just needed some validation back then 10 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back when he would give validation. He only did it back then. Couldn't stop that.
But so thank you so much, guys. And Bruce, I'd love to have you on again at some point, because it's truly this has been one of my favorite shows. It's been so fun, and to talk about John Edmonds and his legacy and his life and what that book's taught me, and I'm sure a lot of people reading it in the future and the past. It's been incredible. And Bruce, for you being part of that, it's an honor to have you on the show, and thank you for coming on again.
Oh, my pleasure. Love to spend time with you guys.
Likewise.
Yeah.
And thank you, Matty and Laura. I appreciate you both as well. Thank you for coming on and co-hosting as well. You really have upped my level of podcasting, so to say, making me want to do it more, and like really looking forward to doing them a lot more. So thank you for bringing your presence as well.
Yeah, you're gonna have a sage now, are you, mate? Make sure
I've got to do the kids' bedtime routine now. I've got to say their prayers and put them to bed. It's like a bit of a routine I do with them.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you, Bruce.
It's
It's really great to get some more insight on the book. Really appreciate that. And yeah, let's do
me?
another one, Dale.
Yes.
What is going on with Laura? You seem like a different woman somehow. You're just so radiant. So if my wife spoke English, I'd get punched in the face right now. But you're just, I don't know. I don't know what you did this weekend, but you're just glowing. I don't know.
Too much sun. I love the sun. That's how I recharge my battery, and that's what I recommend to everybody. Go in the sun. Yeah. Okay. Get the light. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. But thank you. That's kind.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay,
Bye,
guys. Peace out.
Thanks ever so much.
Lovely, and thank you for everyone for watching the show. Goodbye. I'm just gonna